right?
Mm-hmm.
The
Yeah.
furniture pieces are really big. So you have to essentially, one of the things you have to do is you have to enlarge the pattern fabrics and you have to reduce the scale of the furniture so that they're closer in scale so that their relationships can be stronger together. So that's not the only exclusive strategy you have, but it's one that you definitely should use in order to do this, right? And I think you're going to find it much easier if you begin to take the furniture and you begin to put it together in ways that have a greater patterned quality to it, and you deal with some of the kimono material, the geisha photographs, and you deal with them by taking fragments and making them larger scale. So like the hair pieces or something to that effect, right? So there are qualities here which are better, but it still basically has this sort of sense of dispersion rather than a sense of coherent integrity. Okay, so just made this in order to do something coherent, it has to have some. It can have some negative space to it, but it has to basically have some sense that it is a thing, right? We see that as a thing. It can extend out, extend up, but it's still a thing. This basically has no sort of central quality of being a thing. You understand that, Cove?
Yeah. Yeah. Got it.
Uh, okay. Next one, please. Well, no, you have a third one?
Actually, I just try to figure out the same kind of stuff. I think I can show.
Okay, well, let's just look at it anyway.
Okay. It's like I'm just trying to figure out the same.
Yeah, yeah. It's so. Uh, what what was your thinking on this? I mean, it's clear.
But
Go ahead,
I
please.
was trying to do it like so the furnitures, so whatever the vertical elements. So I thought like since the fabric is playing an important part of it, so I thought like the fabric can be a flowy one, but the verticals can be like inserted around the fabric like that.
Well, I mean, as a general conceptual idea, that might work, but
Okay.
but you have to have this sense of coherency, right?
Okay.
And
Okay.
the other thing too is and this is a very general comment, and this can apply perhaps to all of you, is that you have to pay attention to the first impression you have when you look at these things. Okay, so the first impression I have when I look at this is one of dispersion. I see things as everything's moving around, everything is moving, right? I don't get a sense that it doesn't raise a question, what is it? I just see it as a bunch of pieces that are sort of drifting and floating around. So
Okay.
it's this first presenting characteristic of the piece that becomes really important in terms of giving us a sense that it has an integrity to it and that it might have a suggested identity which we're not familiar with. So it's the individual identity we still see here and that sense of dispersion that are the primary presenting characteristics. Okay? Okay, so who's next?
I can go next.
Okay, let's go.
So this
Okay,
is the
so
first one.
I'm looking at the letter forms and I'm looking at the Morandi paintings, right?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Um,
Should I go to the next one?
yeah, sure. Go to the next one, please. Okay,
This is the second one. This is the third one.
okay. The third one I think is your weakest one. The let's go back to the second one, please. Okay. Um, First of all, I think that they do the things which I was just telling Cove wasn't happening. They have a sense of integrity to them. There's a lot of correspondence between the shaping of the letter forms. Did you shape these letter? It looks like you shaped these letter forms. They're not. You changed them, didn't you?
Yes,
You
I
didn't-
cut them in pieces.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that they're not. There's no. They look like that they have been changed so much that we can't even begin to get a hint that they're letter forms. Right?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, and first of all, it's very easy if you do that, right? It's very easy if you just establish a language that you put both sources to, and that's what you've done. You've developed, and I think it came out of the paintings. You've developed a certain kind of shapes that you use, and then you begin to slowly pull them all within that language, right? So, so it's. I mean, they're very handsome. They have a lot of real strong merit. The weakness is that there's not a hint here, an echo of both source materials, right?
Okay.
There's not a kind of puzzling moment of, is this something that I know or is this something that I don't know, right? They're very beautiful, but you're missing that little bit of tease that they're coming from letter forms. Can I see the first one again, please? The second one is definitely the best one. Okay. One of the things, an additional thing that's going to help is if you begin to use more positively this sense of negative space, the negative space that's found in the letter forms, and the negative space that you begin to discover or find in terms of the shapes between the bottles and vases, right? So there is here, the negative space is much more effectively used. So it's much more powerful. Now, so that everyone sees this, let me pull this down. Okay, I'm talking about that when I say negative space, I'm talking about this, like this shape here. Right? So you can see this shape here is clean and it has a certain quality to it, which makes it easily recognizable. But come down here and we see some of these shapes, which are rough, and they just seem to be left over. We have this shape here, which is very clean and made. It has an intentionality to it, which is coming from the character of the letter, right? So blending in the exterior nature of the forms, either the pots, bottles, whatever, and the letter forms, and then blending that with the negative space, you can get a very, very rich configuration, right? So it's basically those 2 points. It's you really want to not just take the shapes cut out of one of the paintings, which I'm assuming this is a shape cut out of one of the paintings, right? Yeah. You want to take a shape that you might cut part of it, but part of it also is the profile of the bottle or the profile of the piece, right? So if it is not apparent, one of the things that makes these work is the ambiguity between being totally original in the sense that you making it, but at the same time, it seems to have an origin story to it. It communicates that it's a collection from looking very, very closely at some known objects, right? But the sensibility that you're showing, Lance, in terms of the color, the way you're balancing the large black strokes with the soft colorations, they really have the potential to be really quite beautiful. Okay, it's just a refinement that you need to do in terms of those 2 major points: negative space, giving the echo of the letter forms, and echoing also parts of the bottles. Okay.
Okay. Yep.
Great. Okay. Next.
I can go next.
Okay, Ryan.
Is it working?
Yeah, I see it.
Okay.
Okay, wait.
Uh,
You're jumping categories again, aren't you? Or did you?
uh,
You're supposed
yeah.
to. You're only supposed to use like here. This is one category: the military helicopters and the quilts. So if you chose that category, all three of them should be the same.
Oh,
Okay, I think you did that last time too, Ryan.
no, it's last time it was worse.
Okay, it was worse. Okay, all right. So we're getting better. That's good. Okay, but you gotta. I don't want you jumping categories. Okay. So
Okay.
okay, here. The primary issue here is basically that this is a sort of simple addition problem, right? Just like in codes, and that is that basically you've created a line through here, and everything is mechanical there, and everything is abstract geometry down below, right? There's no sense of discovering within the helicopters shapes and parts that you might begin to relate to the shapes and parts of the quilt, right? So again, to go back to my comment with Coe, the critical thing that you have to do is you have to find some qualities within the helicopter, line work, repetition, screws, shape relationships, that you can begin to get an echo of within the stitching, the irregularity, the repetition, et cetera, of the quilt. For example, I know these quilts quite well. And if you were to look at these quilts, a lot of them are made out of recognizable pieces of clothing, made out of blue jeans, work clothes, et cetera. If you were to look at those things, the shape relationships that you can begin to find in some of those things, you can begin to make a correspondence between some of the made characteristics of the helicopter in some sense, really, right? You can do that, right? There's ways in which, for example, let's look right here. You see this little piece right here on the helicopter? It's a little T-shaped piece, right? That little T-shaped piece could sit. It could sit right here, couldn't it? Okay. So there's a way that you can begin to find those parts, yeah, and begin to do that. There's a sense of symmetry in terms of this piece here, right? With this line cutting down the middle, right? There's symmetry within some of the quilts, right? So you're looking for those kind of correspondences, shape relationships, symmetry, asymmetry, dynamic gesture. All those things begin to need to be found echoing back and forth between the two sources. Okay? And they need to be integrated more rather than just assembled. So this is just stacked, right? So this would be what I said last week would be called a composition. You got a compositional device. You got this horizontal line, and one source is there and one source is here. But the form is not arising out of the nature of the individual pieces. That's the really important issue. Is that clear at all to you, Ryan?
Yeah.
Yes? Is that really clear?
I think.
Tell me, what's going on?
So we're supposed to make a new figure, right?
Yes, a new figure. So right now, this is just a collection, right? I see the quilts and I see the other. I don't see a new figure. I'm not puzzled by what something is, right? I just see it pretty clearly, right? This is all these parts are just really clear in terms of that they come from something mechanical. I may not know that it's a helicopter, but they're coming from something mechanical. And this is basically looks like some sort of abstract paintings, quilts, whatever. But they're still two separate worlds, right? So in terms of that, the first day I said there were two major characteristics that really you needed to master. One of them is interestingness, and the other was 6 levels of matrix crossing, right? So if you take two things and you put them together, If they're just close to each other, they're adjacent. And the mind will see them as having some kind of relationship. Or they can touch. And that's what yours touch along this line. Okay? And then the next level of complexity is juxtaposition, where they have some sense of being dramatically opposite each other and in some aggressive way. The first three are not really very interesting. It's the next three that are interesting. Mutual interpenetration is the very first one you want to try to achieve. Those are the things that I talked about. Taking apart here and integrating it into that, right? Finding some idea of symmetry, some principle of organization that you can use that can be used on both of these things, right? So it's mutual interpenetration and simultaneous co-arising, where the parts seem to be interlocking and they be creating each other, okay? Those are the two characteristics you're trying to build on.
So for my second and third, is that better?
Show me.
Okay.
Well, so this is the geisha and the furniture, right?
Yeah.
No? What is it? Geisha and what?
Yeah, yes, it's geisha and furniture.
Okay, yeah, okay. So in terms of the overall piece, yes, it's better because it has a sense of coherency. Everything's relating, right? And there's a sense of inner movement. Everything seems to be flowing, right? So, and then there's some sense of something happening down the middle here in terms of the furniture, right? So this is better with regard to that, but it's still not at the level it should be. And the reason for that is there's not a 50-50 relationship. You need to have 50% of this being made by the geisha and 50% of it being made by the furniture. Okay. So but here again, this is easy to do. Not that it's really easy, but it's easy once you understand it conceptually. You have a dominant pattern which is created by the geishas, right? And then the furniture becomes an accent to that, right?
Yeah.
So that's a strategy. Now that typically is a juxtapositional strategy, but that's not what we want to do. What we want to do is we want to find a way to allow these things to interlock more, and that goes back to what I said to Coy. You're going to have to find ways to take some aspect of these geisha, these prints, and you're going to have to scale them up in some way and configure them so that they can relate more to the furniture scale. And you're going to have to scale down the furniture and produce it into some kind of patterning relationship so that it relates to this. Right? You cross-referencing the characteristics of one onto the other. That's what you're doing. Cross-referencing. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's see the next one.
That's it.
See here, this is just a compositional stacking. You basically created a kind of platform, right? And then everything is stacked in there like it's on a cart, right? So again, that's not the highest level of order. The highest level of order is when, like on the other one, there's some aspect of the pieces themselves that basically create the possibility of a relationship to some other part of the piece, right? This is just flopped there, right? This is just flopped there, right? There's no relationship, for example, between the circle of the chairs and the kimono. They're in an antagonistic relationship to each other, right? Now, if you had taken those chairs and you had married them along this line, right, this curved line, right, then there would have been a more sympathetic relationship, right? There would be a geometric similarity between those edge conditions. So that's what you're looking for. You're looking for geometric similarities of edge conditions. You're looking for similar scale relationships between pattern decoration and the multiple configurations of pieces of furniture, right? you're looking for any ways that you can to find the differences and make them more similar within these pieces. Okay?
Mm.
Yeah. Does that mean you? Yes, I
Yeah,
understand.
yes, yes, because I'm taking notes. Sorry.
Okay. All right. Okay. Okay. Who's next? Who's going to go?
I'll go, man.
Okay, Dalton.
Okay. I guess I'll show you all three first, and then.
Say it again.
Should I show you all three first, or?
No, this is fine. This is fine. Okay. All right. So this is beginning to work. You know, you're using the color. So you know the black and white photographs, gray photographs, and you're finding a gray quilt. So there's a color relationship that begins to work, right? And you're beginning to take the sort of right angle quality of the quilt and the way the quilts are made, and you're beginning to use that right angle in terms of how you put some of these pieces together. So there's a basic low-level relationship that you've created between these things, right? The thing that hasn't happened is that I still see this as the quilt. Where's it? I still see this as the quilt, right? And I still see this as, you know, the helicopter. So everything you're doing so far is right, except that one thing. You've got to lose the identity of the helicopter. It has to become more quilt-like or a third thing-like, and the quilts have to become more helicopter-like or third thing. And that third thing-like is the preference way to do it, and that is where you essentially, and again, it's going to be a scale thing. You're going to need to play down the scale of this and up the scale of this, right?
Okay.
Play down the scale of the helicopter and up and down the scale of that. So it becomes really a scale issue. I can see right away there's a sensitivity. You're beginning to understand what to do. You just need to go to the next step now. Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. Next one. Okay. I think this one's less successful, but again, there's some good things that I'm seeing. You know, you're essentially now you've taken the quilt, which is two-dimensional, and you've made it three-dimensional. And that creates by weaving in these pieces in and out of the piece, right? So that may be a secret for you. It may be something you can use, is that you use this idea of weaving in some way, right? To weave these things in and out, right? But they don't necessarily have to be as aggressive as the helicopter pieces are in terms of their angularity, right? But there could very well be a way in which I can see even the fact here, like down here, where we all of a sudden have things which that could be mistaken for a button on a piece of fabric, or two pieces of fabric that are put together in terms of how the helicopter parts are constructed, right? That begins to have the same qualities as the quilt has, right? So much of this is about really looking very, very carefully at both sources and trying to find the crossover points, right? Between what you can add and what you don't. So the distribution of light and dark between the quilt and the light and dark of the helicopters also begins to work. So again, some good strategies here, but just got to go to the next level.
Gotcha.
Third one. Yeah, again, you know, certainly, really, really good piece would be this one right here. This is really nice. You're shaking your head. You like it too, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. You can tell right away when you hit. You know, you know when you're getting it right. See, I don't know what that is. I don't know whether that's a quilt, that's a piece of a helicopter. I don't know what it is. But basically, everything begins to work. This seems to be very natural to the stripes of that, right? Okay.
All right.
There's another part here. Let me clear that one for a moment. There's another part here where all of a sudden this piece, this part of the quilt, right? And this right here can begin to work, because again, the linearity of the struts on the wing begins to pick off of this. This seems to be very natural to growing out of that, right? And there's also now other insignia that are being used on the helicopter that begins to pick up this insignia quality, right? So that again is a very nice piece, right? One more that's really good is, so see, you're almost hitting a home run on this one, Dalton. You should feel good.
Cool.
Okay. Yeah. What I would do is I would probably remove this piece and this piece here. But then this piece right here is like the first one I talked about, where you come in here and I would cut this, and then this is all locking in quite nicely, right? So you're taking the irregularity of the quilt in terms of it being almost rectangular, right? And you're beginning to use it together. So this piece right here, the cockpit, this bar, this piece, all of that works really quite nicely. You got a little over ambitious by putting them all together. They don't all work together really well, but there's three really good pieces in there, right? Three really nice pieces. So it's, you just want to zero in on understanding that, and you're going to be hitting some home runs. Okay.
All
Very
right.
good. Very good. Okay.
Cool. Thanks.
Sure. Who's next?
I can go next.
Okay, Ryan. Okay, I think the issue here is that the exterior configuration has nothing to do with the internal organization, right? This edge condition is arbitrary to what's happening inside here. So there has to be some correspondence between where this came from, right? And this. So this basically, it looked like you just pasted a bunch of things together and then cut it out in an interesting shape. Is that what you did?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So I'll spank your hand. Don't do that. Okay. Yeah. So you're trying to get the shapes of the pieces you're using inside and the way you put them together, and then where they come up to the edge of your object, that they become the shape, right? See, this is, I think I said it on Monday. Ultimately, one of the ways of judging the success of these is, does the piece appear natural, or does it appear forced? And by natural, I mean, does it have this sense of self-generation? So when I look at this, I can see that your mind is working in terms of how you put all these pieces together here, right? But I can also see your mind working when you start whacking the shape up, right? But I don't really want to see your mind. And what I mean by that is, it's my belief that if the author becomes too dominant, you're not paying attention to the thing itself. So you want to pay attention to the thing and allow the thing to make itself, because you're an incredibly sensitive author. You don't really need to be assertive because you're paying attention to things, right? Essentially what happens here, and this is definitely true in architecture, is that, and I'm sure all of you have had this experience, it's really tiring to generate a new idea all the time. You know, it's really hard to always come up with a brilliant idea. So when you basically take on the burden of always having to have the idea, and you have the idea here, this is your idea, right? When you have to have that burden of that idea, it's much easier if you understand finding the relationships between things and allowing them to create that profile. So one of the things which most artists say is that when they're making something, when they do something and the thing begins to talk back to them and tell them what to do and what not to do, it takes on an identity of its own, right? Then the next move becomes clear because they try to add a color and the rest of the piece screams no. Or they try to add another shape, the piece screams no, right? So it's really a matter of being sensitive to what you've already done. And this is not particularly sensitive to what you've already done. You know, I mean, it's not ugly, it's not horrible, but it's not sensitive to what that's done, right? So most of these things that we're talking about right now have to do with this sensibility, just really caring about and paying attention to the things themselves. Let's see your next one, please. Okay. I would guess the same thing here. You basically have created an exterior profile that basically contains all of this material. I could imagine something like this working. And I say that because this circle basically is a geometric shape that relates to both the quilts, which are geometric, and to parts of the helicopter, which are geometric. So I could imagine this is not so alien as the other shape that you added is. I can imagine that something like this could work, that it seems to not work really where it breaks outside of the circle here. Yeah. If I were to take that off, I would see a kind of complex object that's contained within a sphere that has some apparatus attached to it that basically, you know, operates in some way. So it begins to have a unique object-like quality to it, which is good. The second drawback is that the quilts are secondary. It's not a 50-50 relationship. You want to find a 50-50 relationship. Right? So with regard to the helicopter, you know, you're certainly finding some interesting pieces. You're integrating them in, you know, nicely into that shape. But the quilt basically appears to just be an arbitrary background. Right? It's not being given equal billing in terms of the piece. Right? You understand that? Okay. All right. Next one, please. So now, did you add the quilt over the top of the helicopter parts?
Yes.
Yeah, yes or no? Or is
Yes.
that, yeah, okay. All right, so you introduce some transparency to the piece in some sense,
Yes.
right? Okay. Certainly at the overall level of sort of my previous comments, everything here is generated, exterior configuration is generated by the shape of something that you found and assembled, right? Am I correct here? You're not making any arbitrary cuts. These are found pieces that you're assembling. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. So this one's much more successful that way. It has a naturalness to it. What it doesn't have is it doesn't have that 50-50 relationship, right? Between the quilts become secondary. So if you can take this one and begin to find ways to use the quilts in some way, in terms of the patterning of the quilts, the negative space of the quilts, the stitching pattern of the quilts. So close up views of the fabric, which gives you some sort of textural richness like this has, right? Then I think it really begins to work. This one is definitely the most successful piece that you've done, but it's lacking in that balance between the 50-50. You've used mostly helicopter parts. Yeah, right? Okay. Okay. So you think you got that? Okay, good. Okay. Who's next? Okay, David. It is. Okay. So the first thing I would say is, you have one piece which is primarily dominant, and it looks like you don't really have. Do you have 7 pieces at minimum? Maybe you do. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So again, the integration of everything that's within the striped pattern works. This appears to be arbitrary to that piece. It's not contributing. The character of this piece, even this works, but this piece just doesn't. So if you eliminated that piece, this could be quite successful. But it again, the weakness of it, and I don't want to emphasize this too much because sometimes this is the case, that you have one dominant piece, right? And have you reassembled this? Have you cut this and reassembled this? Or is this one, you cut it and reassembled it? I can tell that. So, and that helps because that breaks up the pattern, right? But it's still, it creates a dominance, right? So in this case, the secondary pieces, whatever this piece happens to be, whatever this I would consider a secondary accent piece, it is not contributing to the character of this piece. It's juxtapositional, right? So you have to find a way, and it's pretty easy here, you have to find a way to take some quality of this, whatever it is, and relate it to this. Most likely, that way is going to be a marriage of contour between this shape and some other shape here, which you've got ample pieces of, in terms of where that curve is quite lovely, right? Yeah. The curve is quite lovely. So there's plenty of ways in which that piece could relate to this, right? Rather than in this juxtapositional fashion, right? Okay. So if this were mine and I wanted it to be perfect, I would probably take this piece and integrate it. Then I would find a couple of other pieces that were smaller in scale that I could also add to it, because it's a little bit singular. Remember, one of the things that I said that makes things interesting is that you have eye movement. When you have something which basically is totally dominant like this, the only place the eye can go is to the details. So you'd want to have 3 dominant details that the eye would track over. So, right? Okay? Okay? So, what's the next one? Okay, not as successful, and again, it's to be expected. The minute you use more diverse materials, it gets harder, right? Okay, so that's you want to get good at using diverse materials. You don't want to just avoid it because it's difficult. Because what is architecture except diverse materials? There's nothing but, there's a million parts in architecture. To get really good at it, you have to learn how to control those things and make them all work for you, right? So that's what really needs to happen here. This has a little bit too much of, I think, a figural dominance in the sense that this looks like the head, some looks like somebody's bowing. It's a little bit too suggestive that way. Also, there's some mood, like in the other one, the mood was created dominantly by that one dominant striped kimono. Yeah, but go back. The mood here, go back to the other one. I want to also pick up on something. There is a sense that this striped piece is a covering, and there's something inside. We have this piece, and we have this piece, right? So we really have a kind of three-dimensional volumetric thing that's created here. And there's a sense of something hiding. So that sense of something hiding creates a certain mood. And that's very productive here. Go on to the next one again, please. Okay, there's nothing hiding here. There's the bowing. We don't understand what that bowing is about. It's not producing inside, outside. We don't get a sense of that the head is looking down at the feet. There's no rationale externally for this. Okay. Now there certainly is a repetition of the stripes, but the color shift is too strong. The blue and the two blues and the green, that's basically all extremely what we call cool tones. Right? This is basically a hot tone. Right? This is a hot tone, right? A hot tone, right? And this is a neutral tone. Right? So the color sensibility of this is what prevents it from being coherent. I hope everybody hears this next set of phrases I'm going to say. Shape communicates information. Color communicates mood and emotion. So you can totally change the mood of something by adjusting its color, right? And you really typically want to use the color effectively to create an appropriate mood, right? So here the colors are fighting each other. Color is more unified, and so therefore what it does is it shifts the emphasis to the shape relationship. We don't pay so much attention to the color. Now we pay more attention to the shape, and the shape is more important in that one, right? Here, the color is the most dominant thing. It's not the shape that's dominant, right? So you need to definitely be able to control that and create the mood. So the bottom part of this is really, really harsh. That's a harsh relationship between these. You know that, don't you? Okay. Why'd you turn it in? Okay. Yeah. Here's the problem with that. This relationship right here along this line, this relationship right here, there's too much equality between this and this. There's no way that could come out of that. There's no way that could emerge from that. Can you see that? There's just a certain visual logic which is being defied here. So, and there's an important sort of lesson there, not just for you, but for all of us. You have to be really, really careful about having concepts, because sometimes we fall in love with our concepts and we have to check them against the visual dynamic of the form. Is that really working? Is what you have to ask yourself. Right? And in this case, it's not really working. Right? Okay. Is there another one? Okay, we're going back to that similar thing with the other one. I think the extending of the stripes, that's a nice little gesture. It looks like you may have superimposed some of these things. Did you? Or is this multiple kimonos? Or no? Yeah, right. Yeah, right. And I can sense it. So there's a vibrancy to this because of that, right? So that holds together again, but it's still you're using the furniture as a matrix or as a frame, right? So it's secondary. It's not integrated into the piece, right? So I can imagine the bottom part of this working, but the top part doesn't work. You know, one of the things that I would caution you, and maybe just you, is that you seem to have a predisposition towards doing symbolic figures. All your figures have kind of like a head, a foot, and a body. Are you aware of that? No, it didn't. David did that. He didn't have it on his own. So, no, but you have to, everybody has to develop a meta level awareness of who they are and what they do, right? And your meta level lesson for today is watch out. I have a tendency to do figures. Okay. So, but here's the thing: it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it is a bad thing. Last class period, I talked about the difference between basically collection, composition, and form. Having a predetermined figure is a compositional device. You essentially are skewering one piece in terms of another. You're creating a line about which everything is organized, right? So in all three cases, there was some dominance of that line. Again, that's not a bad thing, but you want to make sure that that line is not the dominant compositional device, that you're still allowing the attributes and the qualities of the individual pieces to generate the form. And I think right now, if it just happened or whatever, you need to sort of, I'm not saying don't do it, but you need to watch out for allowing that sort of figural thing to keep popping up in your work. Okay? Okay. Who's next?
Oh, I'll go next.
Okay, Joe. Oh, you put your glasses on. You're getting serious.
All the time. So this is the first one.
Uh-huh.
And second.
Okay.
And third.
Okay. All right. Okay. I would say that these are better. You know, I appreciate the fact that you felt that you liked what you had done well enough that you wanted to continue to work on the sensibility of that. So that's good. I think that if I were to draw a line right here, everything to my left, and I guess your left as well, I think is really quite lovely. Quite lovely. I wouldn't really have any criticism of all this. This over here, in terms of that, is arbitrary. The major thing is the color shift, right? Mm-hmm. The color, this has an elegance, a subtlety, etc. This is very harsh and very cold. So the mood shifts really radically, right? So if I were going to do this, and I probably wouldn't, because I personally find the harmony of this to also be violated by the diagonal of that, I would probably have tried to integrate this more carefully into the geometry of the first piece. Mm-hmm. But there certainly is a sensitivity to the way you put all these pieces together. Mm-hmm. There's a really kind of luscious curved profile, and the subtlety that you're playing with, and again, this is like in David's case, he likes figures. I'm saying right now to you, and this is not a bad thing either, you seem to have a certain love for a certain kind of delicacy. A very delicate pattern, very delicate color, very delicate, thin, elongated, elegant pieces. Right? So, and again, that's the sensibility that you're developing in this piece. So it's very, very clear. It's very, very lovely. This is harsh, right? This geometry is harsh, right?
Mhm.
Angle, right? Geometry. Okay. So, but there's things that you've done even within here that are more within the sensibility of the piece over here to the left, right?
Mhm.
But this part is to me violates that. Okay. But definitely, yeah, a good improvement. Next one, please. Okay. Are you reusing some of the same pieces?
Yeah, I'm using like few pieces repeat, like it repeats few times.
Okay. All right. This relationship here between this is better here because it appears to be either a bracket on a wall, or if we rotate it, it could be a stand that all this is being constructed on, right?
Mhm.
I would say, and I didn't say it in the last one, but I would say it here that the furniture is basically really playing a background role for you. It's not really showing up. So the character, this delicate sort of sensuous line character, is dominant. So the piece basically has a preponderance of that. So I would ask you that for the next go around, you try to get a more 50-50 balance, right? That's probably going to mean you're going to have to shift a little bit out of this mode of being so delicate and sensitive, because these are the furniture tends to be a much bolder work.
Mhm.
So you're probably going to have to look at that more carefully. Okay, next one, please. I can make the same comment before that I made with David. You know, there's a radical color shift between here and here, right? The sensibility of this is a little bit more raucous, a little bit more glitzy, whereas this is really much more subtle and elegant, right? So again, you know, I don't have to say a thing about that. I've already commented on it. This is a little bit cruder, you know.
Mhm.
It's not horrible, but it's a little bit cruder, but they don't go together really very, very well. Right? So the major thing is for you is maybe it's one issue. The issue is finding a means of integration between the delicate sensibility you have
Mhm.
and the curves and the furniture, which is bolder and of a different sort of sensibility and color. And that same applies to your color sensibility. You want your color sensibility to be more integrated. You don't want this to be one and that to be another, right? We're going again for mutual interpenetration. 50-50, 50% of the imagery furniture, 50% of the imagery kimono or geisha prints, okay? And get the colors and everything to be balanced, all right? Okay, go. You got that?
Yep.
Okay, great, thanks. Who's next? Who do we have here? We're done. Rhea, you're going to send me something. Is that right? Anything to talk about, Rhea?
Not till I can actually show it to you. So I'll just wait.
Okay. All right. Okay. I may ask you to present it again next time, so the rest of the class can see it. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So any general questions here? How am I doing? Am I being clear enough? Okay. All right.
Yeah, pretty clear.
Oh wait, pretty clear? Not really clear, but just pretty clear. Okay. All right.
How are we doing?
You're doing just fine. You're doing just fine. You know, I recognize this is a shift for most of you in many ways. SciArc tends to teach in most of the classes for a little bit more brutal kind of relationship between things than the refinement that I'm trying to encourage you guys to take care of. SCI-Arc also tends to be much more conceptually based rather than sensitivity based. So, but I very much see that everyone is trying. I very much see that everybody is improving from 2 classes we've had. So I think you're fine, as I said before, we're going to work on this till everybody sort of really understands the principles, because the principles are really important. The thing that's really difficult to talk about, I try to talk about, and one of those things has to do with what makes something aesthetic. And what makes something aesthetic is not having a brilliant idea. It's not making it out of some interesting shapes that nobody's ever seen before. What makes something aesthetic is when the perceiver user perceives the relational structure that holds everything together. And that relational structure has a character that basically creates a certain mood and a certain quality of experience. Right? And that relational structure has to do with these principles I'm talking about. So this is not architecture we're doing, right? We're doing an exercise to expose you to some very specific principles. And these specific principles will carry through whether you go into fashion or whether you go into photography, whether you go into design. These principles are going to be there for everything. Right? It's about understanding, seeing, looking at things carefully enough that you understand their qualities. And the qualities of things typically are the most powerful qualities are the nuances, the things that give it unique character. If you think about your friends, most of the things that you are attracted to in terms of your friends is their unique qualities, right? What makes them different from your other friends, right? That's the same thing with form. Same thing with making shape. Same thing with making ability. Is where you can tap into the unique qualities of place, the unique qualities of function, the unique qualities of structure and materiality, and how you put those things together and bring them forward so that other people can experience them at the depth of your sensitivity. That's what creates the aesthetic experience. And so that's really what I'm trying to do, is I'm trying to give you the opportunity to explore these things and to really develop some sensibilities. And I saw it today. I mean, I saw that there was that refinement from last time, okay? And my own sense of this is that a couple more times and everybody's gonna have it. That's the trajectory that I can read already, right? So you're doing well, you're doing really well, okay? Okay, so that's it, unless you got something else you want to talk about. Anybody want to talk about their love life, or what they ate for breakfast, or anything else like that? No chit chat. Okay, so Rhea, you're going to send me something tonight. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, that'd be fine. That'd be fine. Okay, if anybody's in touch with, do you know, Lance? Did you Damien's not taking the class? He's dropped out of the class.
I heard that he moved to Rotondi.
Okay. Well, okay. I'll have to check on that then. Okay. Okay. And does anybody in communication with Waylon, with Michael? No, none of you know him.
No one.
Okay. All right. I'll try to track that down. Okay. Okay. Great. Thank you all. Have a good day, good night, good morning, whatever it happens to be for you.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Okay. I'll see you Friday. Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you.
Yeah. Come on. It's the same thing over. It's the same drill. 3 more new ones. Okay. New ones. Okay. All right. Here we go. Yeah, great.